Hello and welcome to today's episode of our very new program here at Premium Times, and it is called the Premium Times Election Special. My name is Chiamaka Okafor, and I'm joined in the studio this evening by Premium Times' managing editor, Idris Akibajo, to discuss, of course, what exactly the Premium Times Election Special is about. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Akibajo.
Thank you very much, Yamaka, for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. We are just about 5 days to the election, and Premium Times is bringing up this new product or this very new initiative. And like the name says, it is special for the elections. Can you please educate us very briefly, of course, uh, what led to Premium Times election special? This is not the first election, so why is this different?
This election is unique for several reasons. Uh, 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 this is arguably the first time where we are having more than two presidential candidates considered potential winners of the election. I mean, like you said, this is not the first time Trump time to be conducting comprehensive and real-time election coverage. We've been doing that since before 2015. We pioneered the live deployment of election results across the units in Nigeria. But this year, with the election analysis center, we decided that there is need for us to bring more to our audience, to our viewers, than we used to do in the past. We'll be bringing a lot more commentary, a lot more analysis of what our reporters who are deployed across the country are doing. So with this center, we hope to not only bring to our viewers, to our listeners, to our readers, not just what's happening in our studio in Abuja, in our situation room in Abuja, but also the on the ground reporting on the reporters that we have deployed across Nigeria for the election.
Thank you very much. We've heard from Mr. Kibajo, Premium Times' managing editor. Just an insight. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And when we return from this very quick break, we're going to get into the neat bits, the teeny weeny bits, rather. I beg your pardon. The very tiny details which you may miss if you're not listening to us. And then when we come back, Mr. Kibajo will provide every fine details to us. Stay tuned. Thank you and welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Premium Times Election Special, and my name is Chamaka Okafor. We have in the studio Premium Times Managing Editor, Idris Akinbajo, and he has just told us what an intro to what Premium Times Election Special will be all about, some analysis, real-time details of what's happening on the field, and also I'm just going to try to ambush you to ask if we're going to get any form of predictions from you. Because if you're putting up this election special, there must be something we don't know that you know.
We won't be predicting the winners of this election. We'll let Nigerians decide. However, at Premium Times, based on our understanding of issues, based on our editorial independence, and based on our reporting of the matters, we do a lot of analysis to review the chances of the various candidates. We'll be doing a lot more of that. Uh, but with this center, we plan to do more analysis, more uh, on the spot reporting and bringing it live to our listeners rather than predicting winners.
You said something about, which is right anyway, about the fact that this is the first election that is not between a duo. By duo now, we know the APC and PDP have been prominent candidates in all of the elections. And even when there are 190 candidates, for instance, there are only two known candidates. But in this time, we have 18 presidential candidates, but there are four in our faces, and they have almost equal chances, if I may say, equal chances of winning. How is this going to affect the work you've been doing? Because it's different this time, like you said.
It's not going to affect our work significantly. In fact, it's arguably better than the last presidential election in terms of the number of candidates.
Mm.
Uh, Now we have just 18 candidates contesting for the seat. And we are right, by our own analysis and by that of others too, we believe only four have realistic chance of winning the election, which is going to be the first time in Nigeria's recent political history. The closest to that we had was in 2007 when we had three major candidates there. Atiku Abubakar then on the ACN, Muhammad Buhari then on the I think it was ANPP then, uh, CPC, and then we had the PDP then who became president as well. So that's the closest time that we have had more than two presidential candidates since 1999. This time we have four who have a potential chance of winning the election. We could argue that two or three of them have better chances than one. For example, there have been different opinion polls that have been done by different polling units. People argue some are biased, people say they don't trust the integrity of some of the polls. But for us at Premium Times, one thing is clear. If you look at virtually all the polls that have been released, one of the three candidates have won those polls. Either Peter Obi, Bola Tinubu, Atiku Abubakar. Many of the polls, virtually all of them, predict that Kwankwaso will probably be fourth in the election. But at least all of them show that these four candidates are leading. However, in terms of our own operation, I don't think the fact that we have four major candidates won't affect our operation.
Mm.
We deploy reporters across all the states of the federation, working with our partners, the TJID, the IAGA, the CDD. We'll be working with our partners to ensure that in all states, and most likely in all senatorial districts of Nigeria, we have on the ground personnel who are observing the elections impartially and objectively. And we then hope to bring what they are observing on the ground to our readers.
I'm going to take you a little away from what PT election special is about to discuss the reality of ground we've been seeing. This is, I like to refer to the elections, the Saturday elections, as the most sought after. And then there are different realities on ground, the Naira crunch, the fuel scarcity. This afternoon, I was at the bank and I couldn't get in because there was a stampede, more or less. People are not get through because everyone wants to get in. Are you saying that such situations, and there have been speculations, opinion about how this will affect Saturday's election, and if there will be an election by Saturday? We are not clear on what details INEC have about their logistics and mobilization. But history, the past points, the unavailability of our new nodes, fuel scarcity, and of course how the current situation Nigerians have found themselves in.
It's an unfortunate situation that at the time when Nigerians are moving closer to the general election, in fact, many were held just months before it. Nigerians are being made to go through this terrible situation by the government. Both the fuel scarcity and the Naira crisis are avoidable crises. So you would wonder that for an election that has been planned several months before now, Why did the government allow this crisis to happen at this time? Definitely, the crisis will affect the format of the election. There's no doubt. When people have struggled for weeks, for days to access Naira to buy basic food, how do you want them to be access to not to vote? Uh, when people cannot even get fuel to power their cars, power their generators, what motivation do you think they will have? On the contrary, you could argue that that is motivate them to come out to vote out the government in power. Possibly. But there's also the perception that that was not the morality from putting out to vote. Secondly, is the fact that even INEC, the electoral authority, has been screaming virtually, saying it does not have enough resources to do the election. Up until last week, different INEC officials were saying we need to pay our middlemen, we need to pay transporters, we need to pay other officials. These things are essential. Up until now, we haven't gotten any message from unofficial message indicating that INEC has gotten the cash to conduct the election. Apart from gather our reporters from the like, across Nigeria and those are partners across Nigeria. So they didn't so you wonder why the government deliberately allowing this. And this is made worse the same fact that the ISS in Nigeria has given a clear order to say, the people calling in, now the old calling in mobile offender. And so the determines the truth. Unfortunately, President Muhammad Buhari has ignored, has chosen to ignore the truth. It's a very bad precedent. I mean, this government is in the process of Supreme Court order. But for now, disobeying Supreme Court orders, that's really no room for this government that is academic quality because of respect of the rule of law. However, in terms of the impact on the election, it's sad. We believe that it impacts the election, but we hope that INEC will still act right and that Nigerians will still see the need to come out like a second.
In terms of your reporters who you're going to deploy to different parts of the country, are you concerned about their safety? Press freedom is important. The press is the fourth estate of the realm, and citizens of Nigeria wouldn't know what is happening if the press is threatened and stifled. So how are you thinking about it? How do you see that the role of the press will factor in to the election? And are you concerned basically about your reporters and of course other members of the press who will be in various part of the country working?
Yeah, in reality, we cannot separate what Nigerians with really small and are looking at information the ordinary Nigerians. Just before I came into this studio, the news just came out that government related the political members, 24 police officers, and that about 3 of them were still going to sit out. These are real and it's a security officials. This is the seventh attack on police officers in the members this month. February. And that's why the story in South East, there are still millions of people killed in the North Pole by terrorists in the Pole bandits locally. And so yes, we are concerned about the security situation, not just for our own reporters, but of course for the life of Nigeria. We are concerned about it. However, in terms of securing our own internally, what we try to do as Kenyan side is ensure that our national security and our well-being, our security training, and what to do with the and obviously what to go through as well. So we believe that our reporters are well trained and are prepared to do this and mitigate. However, the duty of the government is to protect the life and property. And improving every day is going to be and we just hope that things will get better and then going to that point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kindadi. We have heard from the managing editor of Premium Science on what Premium Science election special will be about, and of course all the analysis and the interviews and the discussions we'll be having here live at the Premium Science studio every evening from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Do not forget to always join us. We're here to be you. First and very important details of course ahead of the 2023 general elections in Nigeria. Stay tuned and we'll bring you up to speed on what we have to do next. We'll be joined, of course, pretty soon by the director of programs at Yaga, Sinsan Damali, for our next episode. Stay tuned.
Come and say hi.
So we have like 3 men behind the camera.
And
we have Mr.
wonderful.
Willie.
Willie was the one you saw sitting here earlier that ran away.
Yes, he ran away.
Come and say hi.
So we have like three men behind the camera.
And
We have
everyone
Mr.
that-
Willie.
Willie was
we
the
have
one you saw
Peter.
sitting here earlier that ran
Yes,
away.
he ran away.
Come and say hi.
So we have like three men behind the camera.
And
We have
everyone
Mr.
that-
Willie.
Willie was
we
the
have
one you saw
Peter.
sitting here earlier that ran
Yes,
away.
he ran away.
Come and say hi.
So we have like three men behind the camera.
And
We have
everyone
Mr.
that-
Willie.
Willie was
we
the
have
one you saw
Peter.
sitting here earlier that ran
Yes,
away.
he ran away.
Come and say hi.
So we have like three men behind the camera.
And
We have
everyone
Mr.
that-
Willie.
Willie was
we
the
have
one you saw
Peter.
sitting here earlier that ran
Yes,
away.
he ran away.
Come and say hi.
So we have like three men behind the camera.
And
We have
everyone
Mr.
that-
Willie.
Willie was
we
the
have
one you saw
Peter.
sitting here earlier that ran
Yes,
away.
he ran away.
Come and say hi.
So we have like
As you can see, we have a new guest in the studio. Like I said earlier, we'll be speaking to Cynthia Mbamalu, a director of programs at Yaga Africa. And Yaga has been doing a lot of work leading up to the election, which is basically their forte: elections, elections, elections. And we have 5 days to go. And there's no better person to open up, Premium Times Election Special, talk about the elections and, a few analyses around what is happening and our current realities around the Cynthia Mbamalu. Hi, Cynthia.
Hello,
Thank you for coming on.
great.
I mean, it's been a busy day, I'm sure, but thank you for honoring the invite.
I
So,
can't say no to you.
thank you. Yeah, so speak to us about the realities you see as Yaga, as an organization who have been working on this for quite some time now. The differences you're seeing, the changes, the improvements, and the shortfalls, of course. Speak to us generally on what you are seeing.
Well, I think first is to, I think maybe first to commend Nigerians who have, over the period of this planning, from the registration period till date, engaging the process, those who went out to get registered, those who collected their PVCs, and all those young people who are doing peer-to-peer mobilization.
Yeah.
I wanted to start from that because that for me is huge. Because the beauty of democracy is that you have the people driving the process, and to see younger people mobilizing their peers, younger people getting involved in the campaigns. If you go on social media, you'd have young people having debates around issues. I think that for me is important, and it's progressive for our developing democracy. And if you think around what are the innovations, what are the positives we're seeing in the process that I think ought to, or I believe should inspire confidence in voters to participate. I'll just say the major one is that this would be the first elections, the first national elections, where the Electoral Act would be the Electoral Act 2022 would be implemented. And that's because the law was passed in February last year, and we only tested it in two off-cycle elections. So this is the first time it will be tested at the national elections. And why is this exciting? Now, the Electoral Act, amongst other things, it provides INEC with the power to deploy technology to accredit voters and to ensure electronic transmission of results. And it also gives INEC financial independence. So before, we had a situation where months to the elections, the Electoral Commission was still waiting for its funding for the elections. And that affected things around logistics management, elections operations, and what have you. But this time around, in the Act provides that 1 year to the elections, the Electoral Commission would have access to its funding, and it also put it on a consolidated revenue. So what we have now is that INEC received its funding early. Whether it's sufficient or not is another debate, right? But planning began a bit early. So if you look at reports from the states, we know that non-sensitive materials were already deployed to local government levels as at early February. Sensitive materials like the beavers were deployed already to the states. And I want to talk a bit about technology later. So this makes it easier to track INEC's planning for the elections. The other innovation around things like disability participation, the new law makes it mandatory for INEC to provide assistive materials for persons with disabilities to participate. And if you look at INEC's display of register, for the first time, we have INEC providing data on disability registration and the kinds of disability, which for me is progressive. There are so many other things. So this for me, I believe, are important innovation that ought to inspire confidence. And I want to talk a bit about technology because I'm a millennial, so I don't sound a young person. What Gen Z will come after me. But yeah, why is important? Because a lot of young people in the electoral reform process, it was one thing young people were pushing and advocating for. It was technology. But even beyond the youth population, a lot of Nigerians believe that technology would promote transparency in the process, which is what we got in the Electoral Act. And what is this technology for these elections? For the elections, the Electoral Commission will deploy the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS. Now, the BVAS replaces the smart card reader that was used before. But the main difference between the BVAS and the smart card reader was the smart card reader basically used to read. The main job at the time was to read the PVC. It tried biometric authentication, but it was not as successful. But the BVAS is bimodal in the sense that beyond verifying the permanent voters card, it also ensures biometric authentication of voters. So be it their fingerprint or their facials. Now, why is this important? This second part is If you follow news, you hear people saying things like PVCs are being bought. So before, people could buy PVCs and impersonate voters and use it to vote, because then if the smart card reader reads your PVC, you are allowed to vote, and there was manual accreditation. But now, because of the new law, what the BVAS requires is it's not just your PVC. So even though they confirm, either verify your PVC or confirm your name is on the BVAS, it also needs to authenticate your biometrics. And the idea is that we all have unique identifiers, right? We can't have even twins have there's a difference in their biometrics. And with that, it has the potential to limit multiple voting and to limit fraudulent voters. So people who went to purchase PVCs will not be able to use it because you need to pass the two level of authentication. And believing that INEC would ensure full deployment across every polling unit where elections would hold, and that the BVAS is deployed throughout the election process. Just imagine the potential to ensure that it's truly one person, one vote, and that individuals who have decided to buy PVCs to use it, that plan would be destroyed basically. And so that for me is important because it guarantees transparency in the process. It ensures that only voters who are validly registered and who are recognized with their PVCs would be allowed to vote. That's one major thing. The second thing about technology is we would also have the results transmitted from the polling unit level. Remember, before now, the weakest link in our elections were the collation process, because once we move from the polling unit, sometimes magic just happens within polling unit to what level. Figures are changed, right? But this time around, with the beavers that would be used to upload the result on the INEX result portal, after voting and the process concludes, the officials are required to record the votes and accreditation data. Everything is recorded on the results sheets, the polling is result sheet, which is from EC8A, and then they take a picture of that result sheet with the beavers at the polling unit and upload on the INEX result portal. And once it goes on the INEX result portal, citizens anywhere you are, as long as you've created an account on the portal, you can log into the portal and download polling its result. Now, this gives power to the people in the sense that average Nigerians can now sit in the comfort of their homes, even start to collect their result. If you're interested in the result of your local government, you can just go to your local government and start downloading the polling its result and collating that. That way, we now have a dual mode of results collation and transmission, because while the electronic happens, the manual still happens. So you upload, but officials still move with the results to the collation centers where it is collated. And I want to talk about, because a lot of people, there's always this question about, I voted, but will my vote count? Now, with the BVAS and with the IREV, there is greater possibilities that yes, your votes will count, because now you have the power to follow your votes as it's counted from the polling unit. You also have a system in place that helps checkmate those areas where manipulations were easy previously. So that for me, I want to just focus on technology. There's a lot more we could talk about.
So I'm going to hold you there and just to return to our viewers to say that I'm sure you agree with me at this point that Cynthia is the best person to tell us what's going on leading up to the elections. But we'll take a very quick break, and when we come back, Cynthia will be here to provide more details on what's happening on every corner concerning the 2023 general elections. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome back. We're still here with Sinchamba Malu of Yaga. She's the director of programs. Everything elections is what Yaga does, like I said earlier. And you heard Cynthia point out a few jamming points for me. The fact that young people are starting to own the process. And personally, nothing makes me more happy than to see that young people are coming on board this conversation. Before people say, oh, I have no business in politics is for old people. And then they make decisions that concern us, that determine the way we exist as human beings in this country. So that for me, of course, is a no-brainer. Sellouts. But the young people are on, on this political conversation. And then the beavers. But one question I think recently came up about the beavers will be the Australian elections.
Yeah.
I'm sure you knew I was going to come there.
know.
So it questions the credibility of the beavers. One moment we had these figures, the next moment new figures came up. What happened there? And you have spoken so highly and given credit to INEC about the great stuff they've done with the beavers. And now there's a question there.
Yeah, sadly, the Oshun seem to have raised some of these concerns. But I think it's important that we agree on one thing. One thing, the decision from Oshun, one of the things that was clear was that the beavers is functional. It never said the beavers was not functional. And I think for a lot of young people, for a lot of people who had conversations about this, probably did not also read it. I mean, the judgment is about 108 pages, so I wouldn't blame anyone. But what it showed that beavers work. And if I want to just summarize some of the major things, because the case or the decision or the petitioner challenged that elections on three grounds. One of them was challenge the qualification of the candidate that won the election, challenged that or claimed or asserted that there was not compliance, and then that the person that won did not win with the lot number of votes. And there were about 744 polling units in question, spread across seven local government areas. Now, the conversation was around the beavers, and I wanted to mention this. So, the new Electoral Act provides that to define overvoting, where the total number of votes cast is more than the number of accredited voters, the result for that polling unit would be cancelled. The idea is that accredited voters shows the people who turned out to vote, and you cannot have the total votes more than the accredited because if you do, I mean, the rules come to votes. So, and even if it's by one vote, if there is overvoting, it's cancelled. Now, to ascertain the number of accredited voters, the Beavers has the data because the Beavers gives the data of accredited voters. And that is what the law provides, and it's applied. Now, the conversation in the Ocean case was that there are 744 polling units within seven local governments where there were cases of overvoting. However, the main bone of contention was the petitioner, which is the party that was I don't want to call the parties. Go and know who the petitioner is. The petitioner had received a certified true copy of the records from the Beavers earlier, which was submitted to court. Now, because for every case you join INEC, the respondents had reached out to INEC also and received a certified true copy. Now, the argument, and then INEC also presented that and presented the Beavers for those locations. Now, I mean, one of my questions was why challenge this polling unit in these seven local governments? If you want to raise case of voting, it would have been nice to assess generally, because it's always good to have a fair conversation, a balanced conversation. But now the question was the first this copy that was submitted was before the data on the Beavers was synchronized. So if you read the judgment, it comes around synchronized data. But INEC, in presenting its evidence, because it takes a while, it's just like when you're uploading things to the cloud, right? For those of us who, if you want to upload stuff or even backup, sometimes it takes a while. It's not instantaneous, right? Actually, it depends on data and all of that.
Yeah.
Now, after Beavers is deployed for accreditation, what happens is there is a process of uploading everything to the back end for it to be stored. Now that's what they talk about synchronization.
Yeah.
And what it seems like the first certified true copy was done before it was synchronized. Now the subsequent two, the one that the respondent presented, and even and the one the Electoral Commission presented, when it was after synchronized, meaning that all the data, so it took longer time, meaning that all the data had gone up to the cloud. I'm using the very simplified term
Yeah.
so we understand and all of that. Now, where the challenge was that the court relied on the first certified true copy. And the question was, okay, what about the one that came post synchronization? And when there was an analysis of the report that came post synchronization, it tallied with the data on the beavers, because the beavers, all the beavers used in this 744 local government polling units were brought to court. And so, and I mean, as an honorary person, I would say if the data on the beavers tallies with the data post synchronization, wouldn't it have made sense to rely on that? But I'm not the court. So that, which is why I said it did not state that the beavers did not work. One thing, if we even read the case, it showed that the beavers functions and it does work. It just about the other technicalities, and also it's an eye opener for the Electoral Commission to also look at that. There were records of overvoting in some locations that indicated they had some places one overvoting by one, by two. I think the most was overvoting by 10 votes. So there's also a lot of questions, which is why post that decision, there's been several groups engaging the Electoral Commission. One, before you issue any document, you have to ensure you finish every internal process that's required, better oversight within the commission. But the other part is in the deployment of the technology, we need to explain to people two things. One, where you have two beavers deployed, because in Oshun there were some polling units with more than 750 registered voters. Now, what INEC did was for locations with high number of voters, two beavers machines were deployed. But what we observed in Oshun was two beavers deployed to the same polling unit. Remember that the register of voters for each polling unit is configured on the beavers before election, which is why you can't take one beaver to another location. It wouldn't work. Now, what happened, what we saw in Oshun that we had advocated for, that INEC has improved on, is when you had, let's say, two beavers deployed to the same polling unit, each of the beavers had the register of voters of the polling unit, the same register of voters. Now, if someone wants to be manipulative and sees that there's a lot of crowd, I can get updated on one and go and get updated on the second one. It is it should, at the end, when it is synchronized or merged, it would be seen as overvoting, because almost like one person tried to do that. We don't know how many people made this, but you know, Nigerians, a lot of people want to test things. But one of the things we had seen INEC do in the mock accreditation was where you have more than one beavers, it's not the same. So I think what we're doing, like they use alphabets. For instance, if those with the surname A to M are on one beavers, the second will have from N to Z. In that way, you can say, okay, if you're on this, we have two beavers. That way, just to minimize waiting to the end to find out, just so that someone cannot accredit more than once. And because you know the beavers that is deployed, it's not connected to the internet, so it's not going to a central data servers anyway, which is why it doesn't, because the idea is let it not rely on internet, because some locations don't have internet. And for accreditation, we don't need internet. So what matters is that it is configured. The only time the beavers requires connectivity is when it wants to upload results. And INEC has done a mapping of blind spots. There are locations we know that result may not upload because of connectivity, but even within those locations, you can move some meters and it can upload. What is required is that a picture of that result is taken at the polling unit before moving, because at the polling unit, a lot of voters wait to see what happens. And then you can't take a raw picture of a wrong result form or change the figures there, right? So that's what happened. That's when internet is needed for that point of upload. And like I said, from Ocean, it just still shows that the Beavers works. But when it comes to court cases, I know there's an appeal on that decision. I'm not sure what the outcome would be, but we'll wait to see how the court makes its ruling.
I love the advocacy you've done on behalf of INEC, but I mean, it's not just, a bland advocacy. You've shown workings, and it's interesting to see. And I'm happy to see that Beavers works. And what you just said about the mock accreditation is excellent. And I hope it works. That way, overvoting doesn't happen. But I like the fact that, when we were using the smart card readers. Overvoting was, the second name of the smart card. People could do whatever they wanted to do. But you just said that the highest number of overvoting was around 10 or so, which, indicative that this is in no time, if we are committed to doing this, we won't have such cases. You are a lawyer, and then we see, you just said something about, INEC is always added to a case. And in 2019, Mr. Yakub Mahmoud complained about the number of cases they've had to deal with. And how this eats into their resources because you have to hire lawyers, bring your witnesses, and you're going from one court to the other. And they had about 1,600 cases after the 2019 election. There are over 600 pre-election cases in court as we speak. The UN resident coordinator have talked about the number of people here and there. As a lawyer, it's important that I come to you from your profession. This is worrisome that we're all going to courts, and then we overburden the judges at the courts. So there's a manpower problem there. You know, we don't have enough hands to treat the number of cases we are bringing. And the UN resident coordinator advised that, politicians to try to solve their problem within their party structures and constitution. How would this affect, decisions in real time? Oshun came 6 months after, just when we're one step away from getting into this, and you're giving us a judgment and confusing everybody's mind. How would this, going to court for every little thing, and by every little thing, as much as someone breathing on your face, you're in court already too. And these cases are all over, all over. We hear them in the news. Someone saying this is that. How does it affect, the bigger picture? Saying this election has ended, and we know that we have a leader, and someone doesn't wake up tomorrow morning and say, "Oh, I'm in court. The results were wrong and right."
Hmm. Very important question. Before I respond to that, I want to say something. Yes, we've been doing advocacy for the viewers, but we're one of the major critics of INEC, which is why I said from Moshun, what we observed, we made a lot of noise. And I think for every citizen, while we're optimistic, well, in Yaga, we like to say it's cautious optimism. So we're optimistic, but we need to constantly be on INEC's neck, because if you relax, they could also relax. And for every Nigerian, understand the law, get abreast with the law so that you can demand accountability and hold your officials to do the right things at the polling unit. And now, as a lawyer, someone said that the judiciary is part of the problem, lawyers are part of the problem. I don't believe that totally. I think when it comes to the electoral process, sadly, we've seen people who see or engage the electoral process from a transactional point of view, and for them, everything is up for grabs, like it's commercial. And the one way to resolve this pre-election, the number of cases in court, is basically getting our political parties to work better. And why? Most of these pre-elections cases are outcomes from party primaries, candidate nomination processes, where one, either the party primaries were not democratic and they did not give fair chance to individuals, or they imposed candidates on people, or they did not have a transparent primaries. And you have aggrieved members of the parties going to court to challenge the outcome of the primaries. There's one part. There's the other part around parties who fail to comply to the guidelines, especially as it relates to timeline on how to submit, when to submit your candidate nomination. Because I remember we were having a meeting with the Electoral Commission about 2 weeks ago, and they talked about a ruling from the court demanding that some candidates be added on and recognized as candidates for the elections. Candidates that INEC had said were not qualified because the parties filed or did not submit the names of candidates within the timeline. Everything was done technology on the leverage on technology. Before, what used to happen is when after INEC says today is the day to submit candidate list, some parties will now come close to midnight to the gate and start looking for INEC to provide them with printers to start printing and photocopying. Now INEC says this time we'll open the portal. Once it's midnight, the portal shuts. I know this is technology. If you've submitted applications before, they give you a time. Some people still felt they could, and no, when you go to court, superior agreement ends up winning. So some of these cases, honestly, are just because parties were not compliant to the rules, or their party primaries were flawed, which is why I believe that to solve this problem, honestly, it's back to the political parties. Parties need to understand that they play an important role in building our electoral democracy. They need to have more credible and transparent primaries that is democratic and upholds principles of democracy. Because if they don't have that, we'll continually have this case. And they cost us a lot because most of these cases, INEC is joined. Now, when INEC is joined as a party, INEC is an institution of the law. It needs to also show up in court, which means that, yes, people may say it's not the chair that is showing up, but resources that should be deployed for other things are now deployed to go into court. So you talked about over 600 cases. Yes, and you can imagine that between the primaries and now, INEC literally has to appear in court for so many things. That is just insane. And it's just because parties are failing to play by the rules. And when INEC enforces its rules, they want to go to court and challenge it. And sadly, sometimes we worry that the courts may also not be fully abreast of the need to apply the law through the spirit of the law, but also in line with the importance of upholding our democracy and the sanctity of the process. And I think that for me is important because as we move towards the elections, a lot of people have started raising the conversation around the role of the courts. If you look at the decisions that have come recently, there have been lots of questions. And I know the judiciary have they come up with to say, oh, stop criticizing us this harshly. But the truth is, when the court is seen as the hope of the average or the ordinary person, we expect that when it comes to decisions around elections, that the court should put the sovereignty of the people first, sovereignty of Nigeria first, and prioritize the need for our democracy to grow over every other technicalities. And why do I say that? If you read the judgment from the Supreme Court in Kenya, in the decision last year after the party, the Odinga, who was in runner up, challenged the election of Ruto in court, within 2 weeks, the judgment was delivered. And it's helpful because I want to enter timeline now. It's helpful that cases are speedily resolved, have impact on the process. That way, citizens also understand the outcome on time. But if you read beyond the timeline, if you read the judgment, there was something the judge said, and he said that at the end, sovereignty of Kenya is more important than political interest, and they have to uphold it because Kenyans, democracy, the people of Kenyans, the will of the people of Kenyans was more important than any other interest, right? So for me, for these elections, the court needs to stick to timelines. Reviews have made it to provide for timelines in the constitution when it comes to elections litigation, both pre and post. And it's important these timelines are adhered to, but also in their decision, they really need to put the sovereignty of the people above every other interest and the development of our democracy above every other interest.
So we're almost running out of time. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, I'd like you to, take questions or respond to questions around INEX logistics, advocacy on what a possible runoff would mean for Nigeria. We'll take a quick break. Since still here, very much available and giving us response and educating us, of course. But please don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back.
We need a youth-friendly president who will recognize the fact that Nigerian youths need just a little touch.
We need somebody that cares for the citizens, because these present leaders now, they just value themselves and people around them.
Elections are around the corner. We are here on the streets of Abuja to ask Nigerians what qualities they expect from the next president. I am Oge Udebunam, Premium Times.
Nigerians are optimistic. They are hopeful to get a president that will symbolize, identify, represent, signify, defend, and aggregate the collective nuances of the generality of the good people of Nigeria. A president that will make this country politically stable, economically viable, socially, religiously, ethno and historical, environmentally harmonious. We need a president that will serve as a quintessential symbol of our corporate aspiration, our unity, our togetherness, our cohesion, and our corporate dreams. We need a youth-friendly president who will recognize the fact that Nigerian youths need just a little touch.
We need somebody that is so patriotic enough that will carry everybody along, irrespective of your religion, political affiliation, and what have you. And who can turn around the economy of Nigeria for better.
I will need somebody that cares for the citizens, because these present leaders now, they just value themselves and people around them, because this is a political season. So now, whenever we vote them, they will not pay attention to us, we that have voted them. They will always pay attention for themselves, their families, and people around them, which is very bad. So we are not expecting such leaders in the next session.
First and foremost, the quality that the Nigerian president or the incoming Nigerian president should possess is that, one, he should be a man of national leader. That is a man that will unify the country. Commitment, that is sincerity. A man that is sincere, that will treat every issue that comes to his table with equity, without any favor. A man that will stand to face the insecurity squarely, regardless of where the person comes from.
All the contestants can work if there is a good platform for them to work. Let me give you an example. Those who say that are not better Nigerians go to overseas and become better people. Why? Because the constitution is working, the laws are working. In as much as the law does not work very well here, even the next president might have problem because it is not working. So the platform for a better president is what we'll have achieved. Are you getting my point? Yes. Have the entity, the people that are called Nigerians, have they come in time to say that they want to live together, and how are we going to live together? This is the framework for the next president to come. I am not interested whether he's an Igbo man, whether he's a Fulani man, an Ibira man, from Yoruba or from Cross. I'm not interested. The point is that if there is no better platform, we cannot have a good president.
For me, I want somebody that he has fears of God. We need somebody that is strong, not that somebody that is weak. That whatever is going on, he doesn't care. We don't want that of president.
Well, number one, the person should be a people-oriented person. Because we're in a country now that life has no value anymore. And then it's happening now. Then we'll look at somebody who will be able to say, why is this thing happening?
Thank you and welcome back. If you're just joining us, we have been discussing build up to the 2023 general elections with Cynthia Mpamalu of Yaga on Premium Times Election Special, and we've talked about a lot of things from INEC's preparedness, the beavers, the Ocean elections, young people's participation, which is my highlight, of course. And now we're going to come down to answer the question about INEC's logistics. You made a point in the opening that whether the fund INEC got is sufficient enough, or being sufficient or not, is another conversation. And I need us to have that conversation now. Because there's a cash crunch. I don't know if you've seen the new Naira notes. I haven't seen any. I'm looking for Naira notes. So how is INEC? Because INEC has also cried out to say, we need money. Elections is Saturday. In the eye of my mind, I don't know how that is going to happen if INEC is not able to move. Just today, the court has said INEC and MCO Lomo's partnership is not possible. Understandably so. Yeah. So how is INEC going to do this? How does it affect INEC?
Well, first, I want to believe that INEC would have had plans and contingency plans, plan A, B, C, D, E, right, for these elections, and they've been conducting elections for a long while. However, one of the things I'm hoping to see is that, one, the CBN response to INEC. Remember that INEC and the chair had reached out, was it 2 weeks ago, to request for cash, because they also are experiencing this crunch that everyone is experiencing. And we're hoping that the CBN responds, because INEC does need resources to conduct a lot of its planning and even for its logistics and operations management. And I know people will say, but INEC can do e-transfers, we already know that even for average Nigerians like us, some of us, this period you make transfers, it takes forever for it to be received by the recipient of the transfers. Some platforms struggle to even log on. I'm not sure why everything is happening at the same time. It's like there's this coordinated effort to just frustrate us. I'm not sure why.
We won't
But
be frustrated.
we still need to go and vote. But INEC has, I mean, there's a likelihood this could have some level of impact. But the goal to ensure that INEC works. Already materials are deployed to the state level. Materials are deployed to INEC state offices, and then from state offices they move to the local government offices. Now, at least from 48 hours to the election, 48 to 24 hours, materials are supposed to move from LG offices to racks, to regional area centers, they call it. Some have super racks. The idea is you move personnel and materials to locations closest to the polling. So racks are like ward level. And some of these places are state institutions or facilities, like primary schools. And we know how our primary schools are, or secondary schools in some of these communities. They don't have water, no lights, no bathrooms, nothing. So on for deployment, I want to give you examples of how INEC deploy for all the centers. And INEC usually provides generators, water tankers, and then food for the personnel and other utilities that can help them stay spend the night before the following morning. And if you can imagine that local vendors in those communities who for instance provide the feeding, most of them will not be collecting transfer because a lot of them, especially now that even some people don't want you to give them, even in the cities, hotel is not going, go and get money. So when I just think about the basic, just this basic thing, I can imagine the challenge if we have issues, if this affecting deployment across the region, even issues around the fuel scarcity. Imagine if it's not properly resolved in some locations. For some locations, people are buying a liter for as high as 200 plus in some parts of the it does. However, I want to believe that the steps taken by INEC to reach out to the CBN would yield result that between now and Thursday, Friday, they have the resources that they need to ensure deployment because beyond that, you also need to pay the road transport workers, they will leverage different transport um, facilities or institutions to move materials and personnel to the racks and then to move them to polling to an elections day. Same also for the speedboats they'll be using in riverine areas, and some of them would use the what they call the fighter jets because there are some locations that are not you need that support to move materials to those, especially these highlands. Some of the states in the northeast, you have to climb mountains to get to the polling units. So those are some of the things, and we're hoping this money issue, this scarcity of naira, beyond just for INEC, for the average voter, honestly, for citizens, we need this thing resolved between now and elections day. We don't want people to be waiting on ATM other than being at the polling unit. We're supposed to be so frustrated and angry that they don't go out. But I'm really hoping that if you're frustrated and angry, this is still more reason to go out and vote because you vote and you hope that the policies, the persons you choose, would have policies that have the people at the center of it.
Interesting points, and I like the way you were able to connect all of these things because they are really so interconnected, and sometimes we need help to see what they are. To conclude, is the question of the fact that this is the first election that we're having more than two prominent candidates. We have four frontliners who have equal opportunities, however we want to say it, and then there's the section of the constitution. I'm not sure what number it is, but it talks about the fact that there will be a runoff, a second round of the election if one person is not able to secure two-thirds of 24 states plus the FCT and the highest votes. So this is referred to as a unique component of the Nigerian constitution on how to become a president in this case. Are you concerned that there will be a runoff and also enlightenment of the population of the electorate? Because this is a little complex, even for me. It took time for me to understand.
Yeah.
What do you mean by two-third? 24 plus 25, highest votes. Which one exactly do you want them to have?
Yes. So the beauty of the constitution is that the constitution is what they call the letter and the spirit. The constitution also ensures that issues around diversity is catered for, which is why to win the office of the president or the governor, it's beyond just winning majority votes. Because we know that nationally we have our diversities. So both regional, ethnic, religious, and what have you. Look at the state level too. Even within states, we have diversities within states. So the idea is to become a president, you need to win one, the highest number of votes, so majority votes, but you also need the spread. You need to win at least 25% of votes cast in two-thirds of the state and the federal capital territory. The idea is you shouldn't be a president because it's likelihood that you can win majority of votes and you want it only in one geopolitical zone or one region. We don't. The constitution did not want to have a situation where there's a president that only got the support of one part of the country, which is why it says at least 25% into third. Because to third means you have to get from different regions. To third and the federal capital territory means you need at least 24 states. And 24 states, it means you can't be in one region. Northwest has 7 states, for instance. You can't win only by Northwest. Southeast has 5 states. You can't win only by Southeast. Southwest has about 6 states. You can't win only by Southwest or South, North Central, North or Northeast. So the idea is you need that spread. Now, this is the first time we're actually having a conversation that it could happen. Why? Why? Because you mentioned we have like 4 front runners. When we had just two major dominant at the national level, we were not thinking of the spread because there's a likelihood one person can have that particular spread. But now, when you have new contenders, what this means is they could affect the vote shares. Ordinarily, either of these two parties would have won. And in doing that, it could mean that there's a likelihood that someone would win majority of, let's say, party Y won majority of votes, let's say 15 million or let's say 14 million votes out of the vote, and that's the highest number, but does not have the sufficient two-third. Now, what this means is party Y cannot be declared the winner. And because no party got it, you have to go for a runoff. Now, for a runoff to be conducted, it's not the first runner up and second. It's not the party with the highest number of votes and the runner second or the next person that will go. The constitution also makes it that what is required for a runoff is one, the party with the highest number of votes is one, then the other candidates would be any of the party that has the highest number of votes in the highest number of states. What does this mean? Party Y can have highest number of votes without the two-third. Party Z can have the second highest number of votes, but Party X has the highest number of votes in the highest number of states.
Would that be the two-third?
So not the two-third. So it could mean that why party Y had the highest number, right? Party Z was the second. So party Y had 14 million. Party Z had 13 million. However, party X may have had 12 million, but when you share it in 15 states, only party X had highest number of votes in 15 states when compared to the next party that had 13 million. So it's not the second party per se. If the second party is the one that had the highest number of states, it will be the second party. But what the constitution says, any of the candidates that has the highest number of votes in the highest number of states. So if a party may not be the second party, but if you check the vote share across more states, this party had highest number of votes, that would be the party to contest, which shows that even in the decision around runoff, it still has to be a party that reasonably got some level of votes across some regions, right? Beyond just one. And I think a lot of people don't understand because most time people think if my party has had the highest number of votes, then my party should win. Or if we win one or two states, then we have won. But I think it's important we understand that for this election, what is important is for a party to be declared winner, it needs to have the highest number of votes and it must win at least 25% of votes across two-thirds of the state and the federal capital territory, meaning it's going to be more than 24. So most likely 25, yeah. And if no party secures that, we go for runoff. Because just say runoff will be conducted in 21 days. So we go for runoff in 21 days. But determining the runoff would also mean it's not about first and second, it's about first and which other party had highest number of votes in the highest number of states. That's one. There are instances where elections could be inconclusive. The guideline also provides that there's what they call the margin of lead principle. Now, this is not constitutional. This is not in the constitution. Rather, it is part of the guidelines that where in an election, the margin of lead between two parties, let's say the parties have, we've gotten the spread, we've gotten someone with highest votes, but the difference between, let's say, party A and B, the difference between them is 1 million. And in the polling units that votes were cancelled, maybe polling units where votes were cancelled, where elections did not hold, or where BVAS was not deployed. No, if BVAS is not deployed, the elections will be cancelled in that polling or will be held the following day. So let's say in polling units where BVAS was deployed, or when I was not deployed, elections did not hold, or results were cancelled. The PVCs collected in this polling unit is more than 1 million. Remember the difference of the two parties won. It means that elections will not be concluded. INEC would need to conduct elections in those polling units where these results were cancelled or elections are not hold or papers were not deployed. The idea is we also want to see the system to be fair. If you have large cancellations and there's a likelihood that if people go to vote, it can affect the share, because if it's more than 1 million, it means there's a possibility it could swing either ways. So the idea is that if we believe that where the PVCs collected in polling units that were cancelled, that the total number is more than the difference, the margin of the between the two. INEC would have to conduct elections in those locations. And that was what happened in Osun in 2018, where even though results were, but they were polling units when they checked. For 2018, what was used was number of registered voters. But for the new guideline, what is used is number of PVCs collected, because at the end, only those who have their PVCs can vote. So there's also a likelihood that it may not be a runoff situation. It will be a supplementary elections. So when we hear election is not concluded, they say, well, we have a winner, so that they understand that why it's not concluded, why we need to go back for supplementary is because if we conduct in these locations, the results may change. So you also want to ensure that there's a fair chance to all candidates competing.
We've run out of time, unfortunately, but this has been a very interesting session with you, Cynthia. I mean, breaking down especially what the Constitution says about the possibility of a runoff and a supplementary is really important. So we avoid the chaos that might come out of there, because a lot of interest in these elections, and I usually say I love to see it, how invested we are in the process. We have been speaking to Cynthia Mbamalu of Yaga Africa. She is the program director at Yaga Africa, and they work a lot around elections and not too young to vote, of course. And she's been discussing with us everything leading up to the 2023 general elections. And you've heard from her, young people get invested. You can only go to the polling units or to the polls with your PVC. That's the only access card you have to a polling unit and to vote. Please join us again tomorrow at the same time, 4 p.m. Nigerian time, here on Premium Times on all our social media handles, from YouTube to Facebook to Twitter, of course. Do not forget, this is Premium Times Election Special, where we bring you all analysis, interviews, conversations leading up to the 2023 elections. Thank you.